Welcome back to South Asian Wedded Life, or as our growing community lovingly calls it, SAWL. If you're new here, I'm Amy Regeti, one half of the Regetis, a husband and wife team raising a fused family, photographing the stories of South Asian, Indian fusion love, and building a space where culture, relationships, and real life meet. SAWL is our heart song project, and it's a place where couples like you can feel seen, supported, and understood in a world where traditions are shifting, families are blending, and love is rewriting the rules. Every episode is designed to help you navigate the mix of culture and connection with more confidence, more clarity, and way more compassion. In today's conversation, this one is truly special because we're talking about what happens when two very different worlds collide and how instead of dividing us, those worlds became our greatest superpower.
So to start with, we were like two different operating systems. You had your own routine and your food and holidays and all those things. And then we had our own cultural holidays and our own food and my routines. We did not notice any of these differences when we were first dating. We were just so excited that we wanted to spend time together. I mean, we were hanging out with
I think
Shirley.
you used to tell me all the time that there was such a difference between infatuation and love.
Initially, it was infatuation.
For you, not for me. Maybe for me. You're probably
For both of us. Maybe that infatuation kind of turned into love.
Mhm.
And we were stuck
Stuck
with each other.
with each stuck. Baby, this is the best stuck you've ever been.
So anyway, so talking about the routine and all that stuff, I was saying that like your system, you had your routine. Say, for example, when I wake up in the morning, I would brush my teeth before I would eat anything. But that was different for you guys. When I say you
what's this,
guys, I know for you guys, when I say you guys,
I don't know that's the whole United States.
yeah, I'm
but
not.
I can tell you that I have seen videos where it's very divided on like who brushes their teeth in the morning before they eat food and who brushes their teeth in the morning after they eat food. So I think maybe you think all of India just brushes their teeth when they get up.
I think so.
You would hope you're hoping so.
Again, I'm not generalizing. Even in your case, I'm sure it's different for many people how they're raised and all that. But majority of people here, I think it is okay for
Maybe. I
it
don't
is
know.
okay. Yeah,
I'd like to know in the comments if people who brushes their teeth before they eat and who brushes their teeth after and what's their logic behind it. And, because I think that was a big thing, like indirectly for you. And I think part of me just flipped because it was like, I would never want you to think that I was gross. And that's probably where it originally started. But then the thought process of behind, like, what is like just accumulating in your mouth while you're sleeping and then swallowing that.
right.
I think that was how you put it to me.
Yep.
And then I was like, okay, well, he's got a point.
No, it's not only that. I know you said brushing your teeth after you eat food.
Because orange juice doesn't taste the same. Like, especially when orange juice is one of those things we used to have for breakfast all the time. And to drink orange juice, chase brushing your teeth with orange juice is just the worst taste in the world.
Right. But I was talking about after you eat, brushing your teeth.
Right.
Like no matter what meal we eat, we always rinse our mouths after we eat. But I'm sure it changed even for me after coming here because
we also made the kids do that. Like it was something that I wasn't raised with, but I think that you and I have adapted to both of like what I feel like in our relationship, what really leads is logic. I don't think that it was you being set in a way or me being set in a way, but I think that when we explained to each other like why we do it this way or why we do it that way, we just took whichever one seemed most logical. We applied it.
Yeah, but I've lost those habits, some of my habits after I came to the United States because you go to a restaurant, you think everyone after they eat, they go into the restroom and rinse their
Probably
mouth.
you do.
No, I don't. I stopped doing that. Even we go eat fast food, we don't
Yeah.
rinse our mouths. So I
I
think
think that just comes from where there was more structure on mealtime when you were in India than
yeah,
the structure out here. We just eat whenever. I mean, even how many times did I used to tell you how work would never care if your lunch was at a certain time? You never had a set time. They just set meetings whenever, and then you were supposed to eat whenever in between.
Yeah.
That used to frustrate me.
Yeah. I think even in India, I'm sure it's changing now. But when we were kids, we never really ate food outside. We never used to go out to eat food. I'm sure
Never, ever.
no, I can count on
All
my
those
fingers.
movies you guys go and see, and you don't eat
Oh,
at
that
the
used to be a
theater.
treat. If we go out to a movie and my dad would take us to a restaurant and we would eat a dosa,
Mm.
that was like once in a year kind of thing. But yeah, I'm sure even in India, it's now changed with all the fast food restaurant chains and all that stuff. So that's one thing. And then talking about the routine, even getting in the shower, right? We used to take showers in the morning, like baths in the morning. But you,
Showers, right?
I know use that showers and bath
But you're very
interchangeably.
clear when you explain to me the difference between a shower and a bath and soaking in your own dirt. Like you've
Yeah, bath. Yeah, let's not go there.
so I think that that's one of the things I think that that's one of the things that we probably didn't pay as much attention to until your parents came, and then your mom would point out, like, the kids aren't gonna get in the bath when they get up. They're just gonna get dressed, brush their hair, and go to school.
Right.
And I think part of that for her, like I said before, that would come because you guys would do some prayers in the morning before you went to school, whereas we don't have that. I wasn't raised to get up and get in the shower, which is probably definitely a better mentality. Like our oldest did that. She'd
Right.
get up and get in the shower. It just wakes you up. But, for me to get up and get in the shower just seems like absolute torture in the morning. But you want to get in the shower and get all clean and in your PJs and cozy up in bed.
Yeah, but also you want to get up in the morning and get in the shower and feel fresh when you go to work or go to school. Anyway, so that can be left for debate. I'm sure a lot of people have
They're probably
different
two
opinions.
completely separate episodes, but if people have ways that they did things, we'd love to hear how they maneuver around there, what the thoughts are about that, and that's a good share for
Right.
everybody.
Yeah. But I think one major thing is food because I used to like spicy food and I would eat rice and I would eat dal and sambar and all these Indian curries and all that. And you were never
I never
exposed,
had spice in my life till I
right?
met
And
you.
you were never exposed to any of those foods
And
until
now
you met
it's
me.
like a healthy addiction in a way that it's like I think at one point your dad used to tell me, "Amy, you shouldn't eat food so spicy." And I'm like, "I didn't eat food spicy until
Yeah, until
you people came along."
you
And
s-
like now I think it again started with your brother because we'd have that healthy competition between each other who could eat more spice.
I know the roles reversed now because now you eat more spicy food and I
Why have
can
Indian
handle
food if there's no spice?
right. I'm okay eating with little spice, but not like too
Maybe
hot.
that's because you grew up with dal and rice and dal and rice and dal and rice.
No, we do eat spice. We used to eat spicy food.
Yeah.
So anyway, so these were all the differences in our systems, like your system, like your routine, your food, and your habits. And mine were totally different. That was when we first got married and when we started living
I think you
together.
just have more discipline, structure in your life. Even growing up, I think it just transferred over to your adult life. Whereas, I think that mentality of being in the United States and getting to the age where you can be adult and then move out of your parents' house and then you don't have to necessarily follow those rules that you were
Uh,
brought up with. Some of them do go to the wayside and you just start getting your own habits together. So I think we both having our own places and our own habits, it was a learning curve. And I think that we went from what we both did in a year to having to merge that lifestyle. And I think, for us, when I sit here and I talk about our first 2 years of marriage, it really was, I think, the hardest part of our married life because there was so much acclimating and so much new stuff that I often wondered, like, oh my gosh, like is this how the expectation is? Is this I was really worried in that time about if I was going to be able to meet that expectation, especially with your mom having come here. I think we learned a lot that the differences weren't necessarily coming from ourselves, they were coming from our parents. And I think that's where the communication had to be more and more important on how we communicated and knowing that you need to communicate with each other before we go back to our parents.
right. I think when it comes to communication, I think you're more expressive. You are very emotional and you don't hide anything. Like you would be very open about it. Whereas myself, I could be emotional inside, I could be crying inside, I could be laughing inside, but you won't see anything on my face.
Right, but I think that in some ways, the culture itself hardens you.
Yeah.
I think that that was definitely a culture. When we first started dating, people used to always ask me all the time, like, "You guys have a lot of culture clashes?" And I was like, "What's a culture clash?"
No, I
And then
think
I don't think that we ever had those culture clashes until our parents, like till your parents came here and then my parents came, and it was like for everything your parents had said or wanted, then my mom was like, "Oh, well, if you're going to do that, then maybe do this." And that's where the issues really was. I don't think even after we moved in together that we had so many issues revolving around our lifestyle or what we were doing or anything being different. They made us feel like we were
yeah.
different.
But let me go back to the being expressive, like your emotions and all that. While I was not doing that, I think growing up, I wouldn't say it's my parents, but just in general, I don't know if it's the culture or it's just the friends. They would like men, like guys, don't cry, even though like
Right.
you.
I think in the US also we are like, that common saying like don't act like a girl, especially if you're crying. They just associate like girls are more emotional, cry more. And so I think it is a more masculine thing not to cry or show your feelings. But I also look at that as I look at all these Indian films and you see so much love and like just all these gestures, but that's not in reality how things are, right? Like even with your mom, we've had these conversations about how your parents, like you don't hug your parents when they leave or come. I used to find that so odd, but yet at the same time, I used to tell everybody that the love that you guys have for each other was just it was palpable. So you could like literally it was in the air, but that was different from me.
Yeah, I think I know that many of my friends they are very close with their parents and they show that affection physically. But I think for us, we know we love our parents, but I think it's just that we never showed it physically, like hugging our parents. I mean, that was never. Um, I don't know. It's just the way we grew up. There was always a kind of barrier between my parents and ourselves.
Did your grandparents ever show affection or hug you or
No,
mm,
no. I mean, they would just put their hand on me and on my head or something like that, but nothing more than that. So I think it's again maybe it's just my background, the way I grew up. But I wouldn't say that's same with every person in India.
and I think a little bit of each of those things have probably made our kids individually who they are as well as, how they feel about PDA and stuff like that. I think just part of the whole process of that two operating systems right in the beginning, us just getting to know like how to intertwine them to make them work together seamlessly was really important. I mean, from our whole schedules, from like just when we were getting up, like half the time it was like, I wouldn't want to get up till noon because my work hours were different from yours. And then you're like the early riser, and I am not a morning person. So that became a little complicated. And then we had where your parents would visit during parts of the year, and we're trying to like manage holidays and without hurting anybody's feelings as far as like Easter and Christmas and Thanksgiving, and just making sure that those those traditions that we were incorporating all
Yeah.
kind of
No, I
fused
remember
together.
one time your mom, was it for Easter that she brought pork or a ham?
She brought a ham. That
And
must have been when we had Bhavika because Bhavika was born we brought her home on Easter Day.
right.
So my mom would have had salads and a ham, so she brought it, and your mom was not having
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think again that was a huge. I don't know if it's a cultural difference, but I know that even in India, people eat beef.
Yeah, I don't think
Uh,
it's a cultural difference as much as it was just a religious thing. I think that
yeah,
your mom, from the point of bringing anything in outside of what was the normal, I
right.
think it was just different for her. So I think just being able to have that sense of like what our lives now look like, really that initial, like I said, 2 years really formed who we were becoming and kind of set the foundation for what was to
So
come.
when do you think that you realized that? we are from totally two different worlds and starting to notice things are different.
I think in the beginning, I noticed that we were very like we're so much the same morally and our values and like I think even spiritually how we feel about God is very much the same regardless of how we were raised, what we were raised with. We funny enough have the very same beliefs about that. And I think that for me, I realized early on that you and I were very different people in things that you did, like little things that you did, like when adults came in the room, someone older than you, and you would stand up, the way that you greeted people, you know, I think that that was also one thing is like we were never told when we had guests over, like, come out and say hello, welcome people. But for you, anytime someone would come over, like, you're first in front and you're like, "Hi." Like,
Uh,
we didn't experience that growing up because it was kind of like children should be seen, not heard to a certain extent till a certain age.
no, I know. I still remember one time, not just one time, like it used to happen all the time when I was sitting at work. I used to work in an office space, and anytime my manager would come to my desk to talk to me, I would just get off my chair and stand. And he said, "No, no, no, sit down." And I used to feel so uncomfortable while he's standing and I'm sitting down, because even in India, right, we used to ride our bikes to school, and if a teacher was coming across, like, then
Don't tell me you jumped off your bike.
we would jump off the bike so we could wish him, and then
Wish him what? What are we wishing him?
say good morning or good evening or good afternoon, and then after he left, then we get back on the bike and then go.
If
So
only things were still like that.
yeah, yeah, no, I don't think things are like that anymore in India. I'm not sure, but it's not just me. Like my generation, all my friends were kind of the same.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of that stuff was. I think we had a lot of the same things in that way, but I definitely being having come to the United States, I think that I saw a lot of you being a little bit naive, and I think I liked that about you. I loved the fact that you were a very curious person. I think that we were both just very intrigued with our lifestyles in general and how we were raised. That we bonded a lot over that. And I think that was well established before our parents came into the
Yeah, I think
picture.
even it took few years to adapt ourselves into each other and then mix well together. I still remember when Nitin, our friend, was learning about our story. We were narrating how we met and all that. I still remember I told him, at this point in our lives, I don't think I look at it as that I'm married to a person outside my culture. I don't think that, okay, I'm married to a white girl, or those thoughts don't come to me anymore. I think it's relationship. I don't look at you like every day and see, okay, white woman. I don't look at it that way anymore. It's that
I
I think
think
we
the
are past that
change,
stage.
I think that it's not just past the stage, but there's so much changing and it's evolved so much to where when we first started dating, there weren't many of us roaming around the world. And I think, other than people walking into clothing racks, and then me being like, oh, it's because
Right.
we're
We
not
used to
both Indian or
we
both
would
American.
we go to mall and some auntie from India, she is like staring at
She
us,
couldn't get enough.
and then she would just walk into the
Right. And I
store.
would ask you, you were kind of blind to that because I would say, "Did you just see her walk into that like lingerie
Yeah.
rack?" And you're like, "No." And I said, because she was staring, she wasn't paying attention. She just like walked right into it.
Right. So we were not as common during those
Yeah.
days, 30 years back, but I'm
Yeah.
sure now.
We
I
were
mean,
unique.
then they were mixed couples even at that time.
There were. We definitely met our share of strange ones.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that just that was, if you remember, like our reaction, if I would find somebody who was mixed, like a mixed couple in any facet, but add to that Indian and American, I was like, we need to be friends with them.
Right. In our apartment complex, we had a couple that you just had to go introduce yourself to
Right.
them.
And I
Yeah.
realized that not everybody's as outgoing as ourselves, or
Right.
at least myself. And so, I had to learn to tread carefully on that stuff. But I've always, right from the beginning, wanted to build relationships with people who have similar struggles and strife so that we, because I can't necessarily talk to my family about these things and you can't talk to your family because nobody really understands
Right.
what we deal with on a daily basis or why we're even marrying cross cultures.
Yeah.
Most people are like, isn't that's the biggest question. They're like, do you guys have a lot of issues because of this stuff, and we really don't.
Yeah, I think we had our fair share of differences and then some kind of clashes at a certain level. But I think we overcame all that.
So was there ever a moment when you felt that we were so different
No.
outside of your dad wanting to talk about our family planning situation? Was there any moment where you were like throughout the process at all, maybe around your friends, that you ever thought, man, we're so different?
I don't think I ever felt that way. How did you feel? Because even my friends, they were pretty open to our relationship. They really, I think,
Yeah, I think maybe that wasn't felt as much from your side as maybe it was from mine. I
no,
mean,
I
there were
think I,
several instances in which I thought,
no, I think maybe when we went to India, maybe that was different because my family, they probably looked at you slightly different. They wanted to touch you and they wanted to like,
pet me. But I think like even in addressing like your I probably felt it the first time when your parents came here the first time and your friend was here who you had gone to college with, and your dad and I were joking around, and your dad was like, "I'm going to drive the car." And I was like, "No, you're not." And he just was so appalled that I would have even thought to tell your father that he's not driving our car. Um
right. I don't think he understood the relationship that you and my dad had.
Right, but I think just the fact that that was the big difference, was like he had no problem telling you pretty much that you needed to check your wife
Yeah.
for how, not let her disrespect your dad, when in no way, like, this was something we were both joking about because your dad was in no way comfortable driving here in the United States as much as I wouldn't have been comfortable driving in India, but I was like assuring him like, "No, you're not." And that was probably the first time I ever felt like, okay, maybe I stepped out of line, or maybe I should have been a little more careful, because I definitely wouldn't want people to think that I was being rude or anything like that at that time.
Yeah, that
Um,
was a long time back. But I think those we are past those incidents and all that. So fast forward few years, I think we pretty much went through all those stages in our life. Where initially, obviously, dating stage, and then we are getting to know each other, and then merging both our
your
cultures.
parents came
And
here a couple times,
my parents actually spend more time here than your parents
right? Then
stay
we
with
see
it.
our parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there were probably certainly times in which, in those times, there were moments that we gained some clarity on like what it was that we were doing and how we were going to merge this and make it truly work. I think that there were the hardest parts, I'll say again, were the very beginning of our marriage, because the expectations, because you and I weren't following any type of religious anything. And I think that my big moment on how much of a how important it was gonna be to make both families feel seen and heard and feel that we were merging 2 families, was when we were waiting at that time to get Bradley's haircut the first time, and your dad wanted to go to Tirupati, and he had, like, locks of hair.
People
He looked
would
like he had a big, like the Wizard of Oz, lion's mane where it was in perfect ringlets, and that was probably the first time that I was like, okay, we had that moment where it was like you again did not communicate and voice your wanting to do that, whereas I was very determined that we were going to get his haircut.
right, because I was kind of stuck in between you and my parents, right? I wanted you to be happy and I wanted to make my parents happy because obviously we married without my parents' consent when they were not happy when we originally got married. So since they came around, I wanted everyone to be happy. So I was just trying to balance that out. But anyway, fast forward to few years. wh- can you tell me like what are some of the things that make you happy or made you proud about our relationship?
Maybe you should go first.
I don't know. I mean, I think looking from my perspective, I think you did a lot. Like you sacrificed a lot from your side. You adapted really well when it comes to the Indian culture because even to the point where you had to wear like Indian clothes, you had no. I mean, initially you were not too comfortable,
That's just
but
because I was fat.
no, no, you're
It's like
beautiful.
Indians are very proud. It doesn't matter any shape, size, color. They'll just put it on and wear it proudly. But I think I was more body conscious in the way that I didn't want my fat rolls hanging out. Your mom had made that comment at one point that Amy wants to wear her sari blouses like she's from the 1950s because I wanted my sleeves like 3/4 length sleeves. I just felt it looked more dignified and I didn't want all of my parts showing. Even your mom, to be honest, like the sari blouses, even though she throws her shawl, like her what do you call it?
Palu.
Palu, when she throws it over, even though she's covering here, like your mom shows way more cleavage than I would ever show with the dip of that blouse. It was just not something that I was comfortable with. And so I think that took a little bit of adjusting, but I think that it was one of the
No,
things I was proud to do.
even you going to Tirupati, by you, like
That was a setup.
you and
That
my
was a
parents,
setup
while I
because I
was
was not informed that I would be ever going to Tirupati without you. And so it's like, what do I do? I'm already there. I'm with your parents. I have to do what they're doing because you were in the United States. So it's like, what am I going to do? Tell them, no, no, no. I want to wait for Srinu to come back. It was definitely sprung on me. And then I was like, okay, we're doing this. And that in itself was an experience for
But
another
you did
episode.
good.
But
You did good. I think not only that, but also you getting along so well with all my cousins, like the way you mingled with them, they were very happy. They were so happy that when you had to leave, one of my cousins, she kind of broke down.
I would have put her in my suitcase and brought her home if
Right.
I didn't think they'd stop me at customs.
Yeah, I think these were some of the things that brought us even more closer.
Yeah, I
Adapting
think that
yourself.
probably in that, I know that there was a lot leading up to before I went to India for the first time. There were so many things that really bothered me that were being done. Like when your mom would do dishes and she just water everywhere. And I would ask you, like, your mom doesn't even like wipe down the sink or anywhere around it after she uses the sink. And you would explain to me at that time, like, the situation for the kitchens in India aren't the same. And I would be like, you're just making excuses for your mom. Like, at least if she could wipe up the sink. And then after I went to India, it was an awakening moment for me because I was able to see like how the kitchen setup is done and the fact that she has someone cleaning up behind her. And these are just things that it's not that she's doing them on purpose. It's that that's just how she's done them since forever.
Right. So compared to you, for me, probably it was much easier adapting to the culture here. What do you think? Like, do you feel like I adapted well to this culture?
I think that because you went to school with a lot of diversity in terms of like different people, I feel like I went to school, I was around like the same group of people in the same status of those people. And I think with you having lived on campus and having people from all over, I think that you were very well acclimated and adapted before you even came here. But then coming here, I think that you just had this ability to blend in. I think that there weren't a lot of things that we adapted to in terms of ourselves. I think that if we had to adapt, it came when we were introduced to our families. And I think that part of our adapting, I think the one major thing that we had to learn is like my family is so blunt and outspoken. And when they say things, it's like catches you off guard because you're like, did she really just say that like out loud? And I think that just learning how to deal with those things. And then, of course, when your mom came and she didn't speak fluent English, even though she probably could have said things better, she was also very blunt. So I think that our lifestyles, even though we were raised so far apart from each other, we had very similar families in the way that, we had to handle them. So I don't think we had a lot of adapting that we had to do, except for when our families came into play and would stay with us. Other than that, I really felt like we were not living any differently than anybody else.
Right, right. I think in spite of all these, I mean, I wouldn't say differences, I mean, because we are still living together, adapting well to each other's. You don't think that impacted really in a positive way?
Yeah, I think that in a lot of ways it taught us a lot of things and maybe even equipped us with a lot of tools that we needed to be parents um, with our kids because we probably handled things throughout that process of having to adapt and kind of acclimate our parents into understanding we weren't doing one thing over another. And I think that it did allow us to learn how to not just adapt as a couple, but again, I think that it went right into how we raised our kids and adapted to situations that came up that we didn't even expect, like when our kids went to school and things happened at school, and then they would come home and it would give us the tools that we needed.
Right.
And I
The way you would discipline them and the way I would discipline were totally two different
I think
ways.
I was more hands-on, you were more hands-off. I think that our parenting styles were definitely one of those things that we, again, adapted to meet each other where we were. I think, again, we could see the logic in things. And I think for you, maybe you got that a lot from your dad being a teacher, being a professor. You never hesitated if I looked or felt like, why would we do that? You never hesitated to explain to me, well, maybe if we did it this way, and then again seeing the logic in it and it made sense. I think that in all of that, that was probably some of the proudest moments that I had as I felt like we grew together. Some people could really argue about how they're going to discipline their children because a lot of people don't think about that in advance. How are you going to be as parents until you're actually parents?
Right. I think those kind of issues, it doesn't matter if you're an interracial couple or like us, or even within the same culture you marry. I would imagine that they would have same issues when it comes to raising their kids
Yeah.
and disciplining them. Uh, because even though they are from the same country, same culture, every family has their own way of doing things. So the way they were raised when they were kids versus some other family, the way they raise their kids. So,
But I think
yeah,
just seeing you becoming it worried me when your parents came over and I saw the roles that they played with each other as far as your dad having that typical traditional role, your mom having that typical traditional role. And I think that just watching you become the dad that you are and, just stepping up even when we went for that first delivery and you were very much the person that I met then as you were when I first met you. I don't think either of us tried to change one another. And I think that as we became parents, those were I feel like some of the proudest um, moments as a wife that I felt being able to watch you become a dad and how you behave with the kids and just gracefully fit into that role.
all right. Don't make me cry because,
It wouldn't be manly of
yeah, I'm not going to
you.
cry. All right. So, with all these challenges and the differences, totally two different backgrounds that we came together, and I feel like we were like a power couple.
Yeah, I think that in a time when we didn't have any type of syllabus, we just figured it out. I mean, I think that the biggest part about this whole experience in creating Saul and all that is when we were doing this and we were figuring out, we didn't have a lot of people to feed off of as to what they were doing or how they were doing or what the outcome of what they were doing was. And I
Right.
think that that's where having this podcast and having the opportunity to just see how other people are doing things, maybe this new generation, first generation of these mixed fusion weddings that we're seeing will be able to have the resources that they need
Right.
to
But you know what? All those differences and all those challenges over the years that we had, I feel like that has made us stronger in our relationship.
I don't think without them that we could be where we are today without having
Mm.
fallen apart. I think that we've just gone through a lot of things that we have handled with exceptional grace. And I think that that's something that we can pay forward. So obviously, our disciplining hands on, hands off is something that we used logic.
Right.
And I think we found a common ground to raise our kids based on what made sense. But I also think our kids have learned a little bit on how to play us as far as like who to go to for what and when based on where they might get the yes when they want it.
Right. I mean, I think even to date they still do it, and
And I
he
think
doesn't.
that that's our strengths in general. I think that I probably am the better communicator. But I also think that with a lot of things, the kids see like what it is that mom does, that we have two very distinguished roles. And I
Right.
think for you, they do look at you more as the provider and stability and I feel like that role model that you have created, in that I've also created that. I wouldn't necessarily say our men are the most empathetic, but definitely through me, they've probably learned more of the
Right. I
compassion.
think mostly my answers are very short, one word answers, and they don't change. Like when they ask me something, I give them the answer, yes or no answers. And usually I'm pretty
But I think over the years, we've gotten really good about like, if one of them asks me a question, I'm like, go ask dad.
right.
And then usually they'll say, well, dad said, come ask you.
Sometimes they do try divide and conquer. So,
What was one of the big things I tell everybody when they're like asking me about advice for kids and family? And I tell them, we have 5 kids, and the best advice I can give you is to never let the number of kids that you have outnumber the number of parents that are involved. So in our case, it's like 2 kids should have been the max, because it's like they do have the ability to multiply, and then the kids will gang up and get one of us when we're down.
right.
And then we wind up like totally off topic was homecoming for the first time, when Brittany wanted to go to homecoming, and I was like, Dad's not going to do the dance thing. And then I was like, but if you ask him and he says you can go, you can go. And so the way that she approached you with it wasn't wasn't about the boy and the going to the dance, but it was about just going for this event at school. And you were like, yeah, why not?
And I had no clue what homecoming was at the
Right.
time.
So that was probably for me one of the ways that we really needed to figure out how we were going to parent our kids together as a unified couple, and not let us be divided in that. And then let's talk a little bit about raising our kids and blending these two worlds. Do you think we thought about that at all in the beginning of our relationship? Let alone like when we started having kids, do you think we thought like as they grow up in this world, how are they going to identify? How are they going to fit in if this was going to be a problem? Do you think we thought about that?
I don't think we thought that far in advance. But as kids started getting older, I think these thoughts came, and we did explain to them in no one particular religion, but we would tell them that do good, and we were more spiritual than religion. They both went to churches, and then they also went to temples.
But I think that we did. I want to say that we did put some forethought into that, like even how we named our kids, you
Oh, that
know.
way, yes, yes. I mean, I'm speaking purely in terms of religion, but yes, like identifying themselves, like if they're Indians or Americans. So we did even the way we named them.
Right, because it's a big common problem I think that we see in a lot of our clients who are getting married,
Right.
that they are like, they know that their heritage and their family comes from India. They know of the sacrifice. That's something that they've been told their whole lives. But to have their parents remember and identify the fact that my kids are Americans. Yes, we are of Indian descent, but my kids are born and raised in America. I think that I did look at that very early on, especially when we named our kids, because I wanted them to be able to use, whether it was their first or their middle name, Indian or American name. I wanted them to be able to be around or who they wanted to be, and whichever they felt comfortable in. So I think we thought about that definitely in advance. I think that we encouraged our kids to embrace both sides. We never wanted them to feel like they were in a situation where they didn't know the colors of the Indian flag or like stuff like that. I think that it was important to us to be able to blend those two cultures and make sure that the kids knew that they were just as much a part of this as they were of that.
Right. Right. I think in the end, everything worked out. I cannot say the same for all our kids, but I think overall we did a
Yeah,
great
I think that
job.
we had a perfect balance between what we were okay with and what we weren't,
Right.
especially if there was like a way of backwards thinking or something like that. I think that we did not hesitate to say, okay, well, that's how maybe this was done once upon a time, but then we made sure that however we thought our kids were going to um, be raised to believe certain things. I think we did step up as parents and make sure that we safeguarded them in those ways as well. Because there are things from both cultures that it's like I think that we took the both from each world. We took the best and we kind of just mashed it together. And sometimes I don't even know how got to where we are until we really dissect it and say, okay, I can see because we did this. Or the kids will say, Mom, remember when you guys did this? I really learned and it taught me. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that was a teaching moment for the kids.
Right. We just hope that one day they'll use this when they raise their kids and think about us.
So let's talk about the real superpower, because this is
Yeah.
really about how two cultures, people have just collided. And it's funny because when I say collide, it makes you sound like two planets that just smacked into each other and just demolished one another. But I think that for us, I think that really our merging of these two cultures became our superpower. It ignited something in us that I don't even know. Obviously, there was a plan in the making that we didn't see, but
Right.
putting us into this business, I think we started and we were photographing like weddings of all different backgrounds, ethnicities. And then when we started doing our first Indian weddings,
Right. Speaking of the business, like how long have you been doing this wedding
you're going
photography
to age
together?
us. You're going to age us.
Husband and wife, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to age us.
2/3 of our marriage.
It's making us more and more wise. Okay. Now, how many couples lasted this long just together, working together every day? I don't think there are many couples.
But we get that question a lot. How do you guys work together all the time and not kill each other?
Yeah.
I was like, well, we'd get locked up if we did that.
But you know what? I think we both have different strengths. I think you excel in certain things and I'm good at certain things. So
This is a question I would love to ask an outsider looking in. But I
Right.
do think that you and I are both aware of those differences and those strengths. You being, I always tell people Srinu's the quiet shooter and I'm more the loud shooter in terms of Srinu, you'll kind of shoot and nobody will realize that you were shooting that. And I'm always the one that's kind of looking. And I think that we complement each other in the sense that you will shoot for the light and I will shoot for the
Right. I'm
moment.
focusing more on the technical aspect and then strategic execution
Right.
of the
And I think for me, I'll take a moment over the perfect lighting. And I think
Right.
that makes us who we are, because there's a lot of things that you miss that I get, but then there's a lot of things I miss that you get because we don't see things the same.
the same. But I think I'm more on the safety side.
That's why
And
we call you our safe shooter.
right. And you are the risk taker. So I think that's a good combination.
Yeah.
So even if you fail, I'm your safety net.
Hey. But then again, you're quiet and I'm loud. And if I wasn't louder, nobody would listen. Like, how many times have you said that we do these family formals and I'm so
Right.
structured and disciplined on it? And you're like, nobody, if I was organizing them, nobody would listen to
See,
me.
that's why we work well so together.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that is our superpower when it comes to what it is that we've built
Right.
here.
And also, like, 90% of our weddings that we do are all Indian weddings. And you do really well with the Indian clients, actually. Like interacting with the families and all that. You understand their family dynamics.
I think that part of that came from your mom not speaking any English and then me having to interpret what I thought was her English and then mixing her language and my language. And now it's our language that nobody understands. And I think that part of that was just learning how to handle your mom with grace and knowing that a little love goes a long way. And I think I was just genuinely interested in it.
Right. I think so. Speaking of present day, there are a lot more Indian American couples than they were 30 years back,
Right.
right? So hopefully they get to learn something from our conversations. And what do you think Saul can do for them?
I'm hoping.
I'm hoping.
I think I'm hoping that Saul really opens a pathway to give families, especially who don't know how to handle these particular situations because they were so much in that love phase that they didn't think about all these things. And as they progress in their marriage, I think SAWL is going to allow them to have access to people that we never had access to maybe learn or be mentored from somebody else, or maybe even a family member. Like our family members, they just don't understand us. I mean, they don't understand why we do the things we do, why we choose to do the things we do. Even when we're out there shooting these events, I'll often hear parents make comments all the time about their kid she never listens to me, or he never listens to me. They're going to do it their own way. And it's not having anything to do with that. It's not that people just want to disrespect their parents. They're not even looking at it as disrespecting their parents, but they also want to be respected as individuals. And I think that SAWL is going to be a great resource for both couples, parents, and those couples' families to come and find a place where they can make sense of something that they might not find makes a whole lot of sense, as well as resources like this is just built itself block by block to become what it has.
Right. I think fusion couples, I think in my opinion, all the differences, they just make them stronger.
I mean, what's not to love about culture and heritage in one individual being able to be defined in multiple cultures? And like I just feel like with us, culture, I feel like culture and heritage, as well as like all these things blending together, just make for better people. Like I feel like before I met you, I'm not saying that I was a bad person, but I think before I had exposure to that culture, that heritage, and learning that everybody's not like me. Everybody wasn't raised like me. And so I think that it's made for a different level of understanding. And I think that when we start getting people together that are like-minded, or even in similar situations, but maybe different family traditions and backgrounds, we can all just be better to help each other in this process by being part of SAWL. So as for SAWL being, even though we call this my baby, it's still us. What is it that you would like to see SAWL do for this community?
Yeah, I hope that sharing our experiences, we are seeing a lot more couples, fusion couples, or say biracial, interracial
Right. I
couples.
want to make sure that everybody knows that fusion has nothing to do with like skin color,
Right.
right? It also has to do with like there's so many Indians marrying other Indians of that ethnic background who are Americans,
Right.
but one could be from North India, one could be from South India. It is almost the same as marrying someone from the United States and somebody from India, because you could wind up marrying cross religions. There's different traditions within that culture. I mean, you can call it the culture of India, but those are two very different ways of upbringing for
Right.
families. I think that if we've learned anything over the last 20 years of photographing weddings, is that weddings in general have become cultural classrooms for our families, because some of these families are coming in to an Indian wedding they've never been to before. They've got on Indian attire and they're excited. They've went on YouTube and they found videos of like the dancing. And so they've got a little bit of like understanding of what's going on, but it definitely opens their minds up to diversity. And I think that that's what's going to make the world a better place in the long run. So, in my eyes, I see this as what becomes compromise becomes connection.
And what begins as confusion becomes a curiosity.
Right. And then what began as fear becomes family. And there you guys have it. Before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you sincerely for being here with us. Every time you listen, you share, or you message us, you're helping to build something bigger than a podcast. You're helping build a community, a tribe of movement of South Asian, Indian infusion couples who are choosing connection over confusion, clarity over pressure, and love over expectation. And that's really the heartbeat of SAWL, to create a space where culture isn't intimidating, where marriage feels supported, and where couples can find guidance that's rooted in experience, empathy, and lived understanding. The Regetis will always be about storytelling through photography, through conversation, and soon through books, courses, and gatherings designed to help you feel prepared, empowered, and uplifted as you move through your own journey. So stay close. There is so much more coming, from deeper episodes to community events, from our rehearsed course to the rendered book launch to all the ways we plan to show up for you in 2026. And if you guys felt connected, inspired, or even a little less alone today, share this episode with someone who needs it. Join us on Instagram and YouTube, or if you're over here at YouTube already, join us on the podcast, sign up for updates, take your place in this growing tribe of couples who are changing the way South Asian, Indian, and fusion marriages are understood. So until next time, keep choosing love, keep building consciously, and remember, your story isn't just unfolding, it's becoming part of ours.